the important thing is just really make sure you're getting the right fit. And when you're talking to that potential broker, have them talk through the process. How does it work? Soup to nuts, from initial conversation to closing of the deal. What are they going to do for you?
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm having a really good day, Lindsay. How's your day going?
I'm having a great day. We just got off a real nice long weekend and played a bunch of games with some of my friends. We were just chatting about all of our favorite games before pressing the record button. So it has been a good day so far and a great restful weekend.
Yeah,
How about
so
you?
if anybody out there loves games, they should get the game Wits and Wagers.
Yep.
It mixes our two favorite things, betting and trivia. So, and everybody can play it. So there's our plug. If you are looking for a super great game for your family, Wits and Wagers is the one to go for. And it's one of our favorites.
Yep.
I'm super pumped though today. I get to talk to someone that I consider a friend, I consider a mentor, I consider an expert in this industry, but also just a really, really great human being. So Kelly Drouillard, thank you so much for joining us today. Kelly is with INS Capital. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Well, thank you. And likewise, Carey and Lindsay, it's great to be here. What you guys have done with Agency Focus over a relatively short amount of time, you've reached a lot of agency owners.
Yeah.
And I'm picking that up in conversations. Just recently met with some agency owners last week, and one of their partners had attended one of your sessions, and he was talking about EBITDA and a multiple of EBITDA rather than a multiple of revenue. You really got through to him. I know. I love
That's
it.
like such a win in this world, you know? I love hearing that.
Win. You're making it happen. You're getting through to a lot of owners.
Oh, I love hearing that. I absolutely love hearing that. So thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me because, you know, there's a lot that I would love. Everybody wants to make an impact. And I think by being consistent and sending a message out there, you can make a really big impact on someone's life. You know, when they own these agencies, they're incredibly valuable, but they could be more valuable if they knew just some basic stuff. So anyway, I love that you said that. So Kelly, we met, I don't even know how many years ago. But you were with Live Oak Bank at the time. So you've had an incredible career. For anybody listening, I would love for you to do, like, you know, from a really, really high level, give us a background of your career in insurance. And then I'd love to talk about your current role, if you don't mind.
Sure. Okay, great. Well, my career in insurance began 38 years ago. I can hardly say the number, but when I was right out of college at Kansas State, I joined KPMG, international accounting firm, a brand new CPA. And my very first client was an insurance client. And then I kind of got into this group at KPMG working primarily on insurance clients. And like it typically happens in public accounting, I left KPMG for our largest client, Employers Reinsurance, which is now part of Swiss Re. At that time, ERC was the fourth largest reinsurer in the world. And incredible experience there. Then I moved to one of their clients, an insurance company, and I spent 11 years at an insurance carrier. And at that time is really when I kind of transitioned from accounting and finance to the deal world and partnerships, strategic agencies, mergers and acquisitions, and then found my way really exclusively into the deal world. So my experience has been from retail to reinsurance across the insurance industry. and predominantly from the deal side. And that includes commercial lending, where I spent a number of years as a commercial lender at Live Oak, and then prior to that, Oak Street Funding. I had my own firm for a number of years, Quivira Capital. So I'm a deal person, and I've also done a lot of operations. I actually was the COO of a large MGA for a couple of years. So I've seen a lot. No one in this business can say they've seen everything, because you're going to get surprised.
Sure.
But, I've done hundreds and hundreds of deals, billions of dollars in all different shapes and sizes. And the most important thing for me as the client, I want the client to get the best possible outcome. I grew up on a farm in Western Kansas in a very rural economic area. And I want agency owners to get maximum value for their agency when they sell it. It's just real simple.
Amen.
This is generally meaningful to the seller and the family. Mm. And I also want them to be happy with the buyer. Mm. The fit, the cultural fit, the type of business strategy is important. So I'm happy to say for the last couple of years, I've just been exclusively focused on making sure my clients get the best possible outcome.
Yeah. So Kelly, I was chatting with an agency owner who called me the other day and said, "Hey, I really want to acquire. I have been doing this and a little bit of that. And, I'm looking internally at my network, and I'm cold calling people in my area. I've gone to lunch with a bunch of people, but nothing has stuck." And he found our website, had seen us speak or something, and thought that we might be able to help. And I had to sadly turn him away and say, "I'm really sorry. We do lots of valuations, but we are not a broker. That would be for us a little bit of conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. So we don't do it. But, I would recommend, if this is something you're really passionate about, you really want to acquire, maybe you do go work with a broker, or maybe you use something like Millibooks, or talk to your state association. They might be able to help pair you." And he had quite a few follow-ups about, okay, you said to go work with a broker, but what does that mean? How do I pay them? What does that structure look like? He had all of these questions, and I didn't necessarily have a great resource to send him to. And when I asked around the team, they didn't either, of like broker 101, how to acquire an agency through a broker. So through all of your experience, I was hoping that you might be able to help us kind of form that resource of, here's a podcast you can go and listen to of what is a broker? How do I utilize one? So I guess I might just even turn it over to you. Like, where do you start? How do you choose what type of broker to work with? How do you match those up, agency to broker?
Those are all great questions. And I have this conversation almost daily with agency owners that are looking to acquire. And I love it. I do actually assist on buy side. I probably, a third of my work is consulting, which includes buy side and perpetuation and things like that. So the hardest part of this is getting the target, right? Mm-hmm. There's 10 buyers for every seller, or 20 buyers for every seller. I do not engage on sourcing targets. You couldn't afford me. You couldn't afford anybody really to do that. To engage on sourcing targets for you. But I have a lot of tactics that have worked well. It sounds like that particular buyer had been cold calling, doing a lot of things. I encourage every owner that is looking to make acquisitions, you have to work this like a commercial line sales pipeline. You have to be serious about sourcing targets. And several things that I think are effective is if you have a favorite carrier, maybe it's Grange or Auto Owners, or maybe it's more general like Progressive or Travelers, but go to that carrier website in the agency locator function and find out who has a contract with that carrier. From there, that's your lead list, right?
Nice.
I'm a big fan of screen scrapes to do that rather than cut and paste or enter this into an Excel spreadsheet in a painful process. I typically use Scrape Hero. There's a bunch of them out there, but if you're really serious and you have a huge lead list and you don't want to enter it manually, use a screen scrape if you want to.
Did you call it Scrape Hero?
Yeah, scrapehero.com.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one I use a lot.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's in your inbox overnight.
I love it.
Nice.
Perfect.
They do a test file for you. You say, yeah, that's right. Those are the fields I want. And then push a button. Couple $100.
Love it.
Yeah.
So you're saying to come up with the agency that you want to buy, that's not necessarily something the broker helps you with. That's still something that you do yourself.
Yes. The buyers, you need to source your own target.
Okay.
Now, there are a couple of brokers that will source targets for you.
Yep.
And there are a couple of brokers that the buyer pays the fee instead of the seller paying the fee. Typically, in our world, the seller would pay the fee for an M&A broker advisor. So there are a couple that
do it.
The buyer would pay the fee. You're probably it's going to be more of a do-it-yourself sort of feeling. I don't know the depth of the services that are provided, but there are a couple out there. And then, for M&A brokers vary about what their niche is in terms of size. At INS Capital Group, most of our clients are 500,000 of revenue to about 10 million. I would say a big proportion of that is 500,000 to 5 million, because let's face it, that's where the majority of agencies fall.
I mean,
absolutely.
You just described where probably not 80, maybe 70% of the agencies are, right?
Yeah. And that's where we live. That's where we live every single day. For an independent buyer, you're probably going to have the most success on transactions under 500,000 of revenue. And there's still just a ton of those out there. Plenty of targets. You're going to be most successful, generally speaking, if under 500,000 of commission revenue.
But why is that? Tell me why that is.
That's a little bit on the small side. I mean, we do represent sellers that have, 400,000 of revenue, but it's not as common. They're just going to be easier to reach, and they don't have everybody and their brother knocking on their door.
So less competition, right?
Less competition. The other thing that we're talking about is sourcing targets, which it's just elbow grease. You got to roll up your sleeves and do it.
Yep.
We talked about the agency locator on carrier websites, good old fashioned Google, white pages, yellow pages. If you have a specific niche, like you write a particular, maybe it's daycare, or maybe it's farms, or whatever that is, then your carrier reps can be a good source of targets as well. But be focused. Be focused when you're creating your target list. Don't chase everything. Don't say, "I'll look at everything." Try to be realistic about what you would actually go through a transaction with. If you're really interested in a commercial lines transaction, don't waste a lot of time on personal lines.
Right.
Agents. It just you're going to wear yourself out before you get started. So, you got to develop that target list, your lead list, and then you have to work it like a pipeline.
Not only that, though, Kelly, if you look at everything that comes across your desk or you're able to hit, and you fall in love with something. Now it becomes about making the deal happen, not if the deal is actually right for you. So I think that's a really important thing. Know what's important to you, know what's actually going to strengthen your agency and actually help you, be more consistent, be more focused, be more whatever, efficient, profitable, etc., in order to increase the value of your agency. Don't make it more inefficient or heavily concentrated with one carrier or one area that actually devalues the overall agency. So 100% great advice. Know what the heck you're looking for. It's also a reason to roll up your sleeves and do it yourself, because if you're paying someone to source leads for you and they give you leads, you're going to feel like you have to do that because you really want to acquire. And it could be a terrible fit, right? So
it's very true.
Yeah. And I get calls from buyers. They get really excited because they have a potential deal, and it could not be a worse fit. And you just not have something to work on.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand. You want to grow.
Yeah.
The next part. So once you get the target, the second thing, and you need to be preparing for this all along, is you need to have a good grasp of the process. And you need to be ready to illustrate to the seller that you can manage this project. Most of the sellers, obviously, they've never done this before generally, and they need someone that they feel not only can financially get the deal done, but they also clearly understand the process of, an informed letter of intent, and then the due diligence, and then the closing and the integration. So, Lindsay, to your point earlier, if someone was getting a lot of targets and having a lot of conversations, but they were never advancing, my question is why? And a lot of times what I see, and this is kind of when I get involved, if a buyer has a target that they have a good vibe with, it's like, this might come together. That's when I get involved, and I help in a process perspective. I help with samples. I help in the cash flow analysis. I help in the letter of intent. What I find a lot is a first-time buyer gets way too deep in the details too soon. And they're asking for really detailed carrier information. And rather than focusing on, okay, what's the P&L look like? Are you profitable? Does this thing cash flow? How much is bonus income? So what I have my 10 commandments for an informed letter of intent, which are on my LinkedIn profile somewhere. But it's a balance to have an informed letter of intent. So you know just enough about the agency, the lines of business, the carriers, the renewal retention, the loss ratios, the profitability, just enough to make a solid letter of intent. But you can't wear the seller out. Deal fatigue happens.
Yeah.
And if you get too far in the weeds way too soon, it wears everybody out. So you need to really step back and make sure that this agency is a strong agency. I get into conversations and it's like, well, it's $400,000 of revenue. Well, what are the top carriers? Well, they list them off. I'm like, what's the renewal retention? What's the loss ratio? Is there any large account concentration? Questions that you need to get in the first, second, and third inning, and help with that, managing the level of information to get an informed letter of intent, but not wear everybody out.
Yeah, then you can dive deep.
Have a deal.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Right.
So, absolutely.
And that's kind of where I come in. And then, we get into if you can get a deal done, from a buyer's perspective, you really need to listen to what the priorities of the seller are.
Absolutely.
How long do they want to transition? Do they have any key employees that they want to take care of or make sure they're going to have ongoing employment? You just really have to listen to what the seller's priorities are. And I will tell you this, those change. Once you get into the deal, it's not uncommon for sellers to kind of change their mind. Like, yeah, I want to work 3 more years. Well, then they start to wrap their head around, this isn't going to be my deal anymore. I'll work 3 months.
Yeah. So be adaptable.
Or vice versa. They get excited again about the business. They're so worn out with everyday ownership and all that goes with it that, man, once they have somebody else take on those responsibility and they can just produce, they're excited. They're like, well, I could work a long time just being a producer again and not having to deal with technology decisions
Absolutely.
and HR issues and that kind of thing. So as a buyer, these are extremely personal transactions. And don't be surprised if your seller sort of changes their mind once or twice or so, because this is a whole new thing to them to think about.
Yeah.
And it's really the best deals. Well, all deals have to be a win-win for both parties. And you have to feel really comfortable with each other. This is not a negotiation contest. This is not about I win, you lose. You won't get a deal done, or if you do, it's going to fall apart probably after the fact. Mm-hmm. So it's a collaboration. It's not about a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
And those are going to you'll make some successful deals. It takes a while. You have to work this pipeline for years. Yeah, I mean, really, if you are a younger agency owner and you're serious about acquisitions, that first year is going to be frustrating. And then you're going to start seeing some things happen. Yeah. I began working with an agency about a year and a half before we went through all of my suggestions about sourcing targets. And the owner, we closed 2 deals January 1. Wow. But it took about a year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have an agent, Kelly, that really wanted to acquire. I mean, absolutely wanted to acquire and got really discouraged that we said no to about 20 deals before he actually found the one that was the fit. And honestly, he's super happy he did that now on the other side of it. He's since acquired again, but that is hard to have that much work and have to say no. But the reality is he would have regretted a lot of those had he done it, because it would just be to get a deal under his belt. You know what I mean? Right. So I totally agree with you. So keeping with 101, how does someone make the decision? You just said some brokers are paid by the seller, some brokers are paid by the buyer. How does someone navigate that space? Because it is not a one size fits all. So if you're thinking about this and you want to get representation, and let's say I'm a seller, how would I choose the broker to work with? What should I weigh in my mind?
So I think in choosing an appropriate broker to sell your agency, which we call sell side representation, you look at their track record and how the variety of buyers that have been to the table, because it's a very personal experience to the seller. And there are so many buyers out there. You don't want your deal shotgun to 60 potential buyers, because that's just not realistic. We know the buyers. We do a very thorough job in evaluating potential buyers based on what our sellers' priorities are. We spend a lot more time on our deals than some of the other shops. The other thing is the transaction size. And like I said, we typically work in 500,000 to 10 million. Most of it's 5 to 5. And depending on the size of your agency, choose a broker that's appropriate to your size. Some brokers only work on really large deals. Their average client is much, much bigger. Our average is probably somewhere between 1 to 2 million. There's outliers in that. We've got, a strong handful that are 7 and 8 million in revenue, 10. But the important thing is just really make sure you're getting the right fit. And when you're talking to that potential broker, have them talk through the process. How does it work? Soup to nuts, from initial conversation to closing of the deal. What are they going to do for you? There are some M&A advisors that once you've signed that letter of intent, they just kind of say, hey, you're on your own. But we really help you with due diligence in those requests. We're extra arms and legs for your staff. We help you collaborate with your CPA and the attorneys on the deal, making sure the transaction structure is optimal for your tax treatment. I don't maintain my CPA license, but I know a lot about stuff. And so I help the seller ask the right questions. And I'm generally on the phone with their CPA and we're talking about transaction structure and stuff. Right. Same thing with the attorney. So we really work extensively with our clients from soup to nuts. My personal approach is a rifle, not a shotgun. If I'm representing a $2 million agency in Washington State, I'm not going to shotgun this to 60 buyers that aren't even in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
And there are M&A brokers that do that because they just want their name out there. And it's a colossal waste of time. And it's also, it is just not, it's going to wear out the seller as well, because there's a lot of tire kickers out there that are not going to be a realistic buyer, but yet they still want to see the deal. They want to have an intro call. They're thinking they're going to learn something, whatever. But, we have a very good process. We, like I said, our documentation and what we prepare to go to market, I think, is more extensive because we don't want any surprises. We want to be transparent. We want the seller to fully understand the strengths and weaknesses of their agency and where we might get pushback and where we see the opportunities that are there for a potential buyer. And when we approach the buyers, we take the same approach. Like, here's some key strengths and here's where there's opportunities to grow. So we don't just throw a deal out there to the masses. It's a pretty custom approach.
Yeah. So Kelly, again, 101 for someone who's thinking about this. We know that you got to do your own legwork and find your own prospects. You got to actually pick the right fit for you of someone that's going to work, who has the experience, has the right target. What about time? How long should I expect? Once I have a prospect and I'm selling my agency, what is a realistic time frame from start to finish that I should expect to get through this process?
Realistically, it's 6 months.
Yeah.
4 months is possible, but that's really hustling. I generally say 4 to 6 months. It's more likely going to be 6 months. That is a reasonable pace. That accounts for holidays, family weddings, vacations, because we've got to keep the project on pace.
Yeah.
But it can't be so stressful and urgent that you feel rushed. You'd rather be right than rushed. Absolutely. So I would say 6 months is typically my recommendation, and it kind of proves true again and again.
Yeah.
So Kelly, is that from the LOI is signed to closing that you're saying?
No, that would be from when you engage your sell side broker.
Okay.
When you engage the broker.
When we walk through, so there's once you have a letter of intent, it is usually 60 to 90 days to close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great question.
So give me an idea, because I hear this all the time. People want to know what the multiples are. People want to know what the structures are, et cetera. And I'm going to ask it in a different way because I hate those questions. It's like, I typically respond with, well, I have a 3,500 square foot house. What is my insurance rate? And then I'll tell them later that I'm a 4-minute walk to the beach. You want to change your answer? Like that's the, anyway, I'm going to get off that soapbox, but tell me what you, from your perspective, you've been in this industry for a long time. We've already established you have an incredible depth of knowledge. What do you see the trend happening in the M&A space today? And what do you think is going to happen over the next 5 years, given the changes that are happening right now? You know what I mean? Like we got AI on everybody's mind. We've got the silver tsunami happening. We've got all kinds of stuff. So tell me, what do you see right now? And what do you think is going to happen if you had a crystal ball?
I think the M&A market today is a much stronger and more savvy than it has been.
Agreed.
Both buyers and sellers are being more selective and deliberate. Buyers can vary a lot. The deal structure can be different. The integration strategy can be different. Their strengths can be different. And sellers, hopefully, if you're represented by a good sell-side broker, you've done a good job identifying what your priorities are to grow your agency, because that's how you're going to maximize value. And sellers are becoming more savvy. Like, I really want a buyer that can bring loss control resources or captive expertise or commercial lines producer development, something like specific like that. Some sellers that are heavy personal lines, they want a buyer that can optimize efficiency of their personal lines. Yep. And typically that's, someone who's really good at offshore resources. Their systems are super, integrated, very clear integration structure. So both buyers and sellers have become more selective and deliberate. And one says they are all different. So the M&A market's better today than it's ever been. I think that's going to continue. And we talk about looking forward 5 years, looking forward 10 years. There's still a tremendous amount of turnover to happen in this industry.
Sure.
At the same time, this industry regenerates. When I came into the business in the late 80s, the banks were buying insurance agencies left and right.
Yep.
And oh my gosh, the sky was falling. Everybody's going to be owned by a bank. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. Yeah, there's still a lot of bank-owned agencies out there. But the thing is, this is such a wonderful industry that there are new agencies being formed and started every day. Yeah. And it could be based on a niche of expertise. Yeah. It could be based on just that pure entrepreneurial drive. It could be based on an affiliate type of business that lends itself to developing insurance from a vertical integration perspective. So this business isn't going anywhere.
No,
there's always going to be buyers and there's always going to be sellers. It's still a very, very desirable business.
No doubt. Well, Kelly, we could talk to you for hours and hours. You're such a wealth of information. And I think you give practical things to think about rather than, you give very practical and relatable things you should be contemplating, whether you're a buyer or a seller. I appreciate what you do in our industry. I definitely appreciate the mentorship that you've given to me, the friendship, and we really could talk for hours and hours, and I would love to. So if someone wants to reach out and learn more, they're like, man, she knows what she's talking about, how would they go about reaching you, Kelly?
Well, the best thing is just send me an email.
Yeah.
It's kelly@inscapitalgroup.com.
Yeah.
And set up a time. You can always text me. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I respond to those messages. The easiest is an email and set up a time. But
perfect.
You can reach out anyway.
Awesome.
Love it. Well, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you guys, and enjoy your summers as well. And let me know if I can help.
Awesome. I love it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.